Hello, and welcome to Tyre and Rubber Recycling Podcast 69. My name's Ewan Scott. I'm the editor of Tyre and Rubber Recycling. Today, we will be talking with Stefan Hay, the Chief Executive of the National Tyre Dealers Association in the UK. But before we get there, if you like to keep up to date with news from the tyre and rubber recycling sector, you can subscribe to Tyre and Rubber Recycling in hard paper form or on digital format by following the links below. You can always follow us on Facebook, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and X. Again, the links are below. So let's get into things with Stefan Hay and see what he has to say about the state of the tyre recovery situation in the UK. So, welcome, Stefan Hay from the NTDA. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll get straight into this with the first question is, what is the NTDA thinking on the waste tire sector in the UK today?
I think it's a very difficult situation we find ourselves in, to be honest with you, Ewan. And I think many years of lack of investment, many years of certainly the TRA trying to make a serious difference with its responsible recycling scheme and all of its other efforts, have got us to a situation now where parts of the industry work well, but overall it's very fragmented. It's not particularly efficient. And it allows for, I should say, lack of enforcement allows for a lot of criminality. And that's not ideal. And whilst we still have exemptions in place, for example, we're always going to have that element of criminality where, people are literally setting themselves up, completely abusing their exemption criteria, undercutting the legitimate operators and collectors in the marketplace. And we still have these scenarios where we find brownfield sites full of waste tires that have been dumped. We find natural beauty spots where tires have been dumped, and it's got to the point where people utilize those facilities available to them, and that's terrible. I've spoken many times at the NTDA's Executive Council to our members and have been very harsh with them and said, we cannot afford, as legitimate tire distributors, to support such criminality. We have to side with our colleagues at the TRA. We have to support the legitimate permitted collectors, and we need to raise the professional bar. But you know what it's like, the cost of doing business. People will always look at saving a few pounds here and there. I always say, if you're tempted, you're going over to the dark side. And I certainly would welcome an end solution to all of this. I think that the TRA, Peter Taylor, my colleague, has got some very good ideas around this, as have, the BTMA. And I think collectively as trade associations, we need to unite to start working with government, with the devolved administrations, to solve this problem. But it has to be done at strategic level. We can't just keep chipping away little bits here and there. We need a complete strategic review of the situation. We need to work in partnership with government and ensure that we do it with them and don't have it done to us.
Yeah, it's a big challenge because, as you say, it's fragmented, and the NTDA is the main representative of, shall we say, the more responsible retail element. But the late Mike Scanlon used to tell me that his research said there was something like 10,000 retail outlets for tires in the UK. And that's a massive market, and unfortunately not all represented by the NTDA. Um, so how can we improve the sector and encourage investment?
Well, in terms of addressing your first comment there, in terms of Mike Scanlon, a dear friend as well, and in fact, believe it or not, the very first professional journalist that I met when I joined the NTDA, and we went to lunch together, and he gave me some really sort of wise words in terms of how to proceed, and I'll always think very fondly of him. But in terms of outlets, I think it's more complicated than that, to be honest with you, Ewan, because we have obviously the national chains with all of their many outlets. We have hundreds of independents. We have an emerging mobile network of independents and companies offering mobile solutions. We've now got online tire purchasing and many of these sort of online selling sites. It's a huge marketplace. But to answer the first question, education. We need to continue to educate, influence, educate. BTMA, NTDA, TRA together, influencing ITMAR as well, of course, and making sure that people understand the. I mean, there are so many things that we're involved with here. We're talking about the illegal importation of part-worn tires from Germany. We're talking about illegal dumping. We're talking about supporting criminality. We're talking about the true circular economy and reducing our carbon footprint. There are so many things that we can be focusing on in terms of having a sustainable market. And I think it is education. I think we have to, as I said before, we have to do it together. All of the trade associations need to unite and make sure that we have a common message that we are continuously reinforcing to anybody involved in the tire trade, whether it's manufacturing, wholesale, retail, distribution, and ultimately collection and reprocessing. And the sooner we can actually, as I say, put that strategy together and communicate that, the better.
Is just on that point, is there an opportunity to open the responsible recycling, responsible recyclers material to a wider market? Because my understanding it is currently only available to TRA, NHTA, National Tire Dealer Association members.
Mhm. Well, the responsible recycler scheme, my understanding is that it's only available to TRA members. It just so happens that many TRA members are also members of the NTDA. So whereas they join the Tire Recovery Association because they are recovering tires, they join us because they're suppliers to my distributor members and obviously want to network accordingly. So, if the responsible recycler scheme were a national scheme, then it would make a lot of sense. You have a working model there that, it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong, and Peter knows it's not perfect, but it's certainly the basis, the foundation of what perfect could look like. So yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, we've had talks in the past, all the trade associations with SEPA up in Scotland, for example. And there was a notion that we could be offering it as a national scheme in Scotland, and as not for profit, where any profit generated, for example, would be reinvested into cleanup operations in Scotland, collecting waste tires that have been dumped or dealing with sites that have been abandoned. So, a lot of these ideas have been floated before, but there just isn't that sort of government or devolved administration uptake. It's almost like they can't see how this makes sense.
That sort of leads into the second part of that question. Is there a role for government in helping to develop the sector?
Absolutely. I mean, the UK government needs to make it far easier and more attractive for businesses to invest in the country overall, and certainly in this area. Now, I'm frequently approached by foreign investors, and they're looking to develop tire recycling plants in the UK, and lots of different areas that they're looking at, whether it be pyrolysis or even more innovative things like rubber crumb generation, so that it can be used in soundproofing barriers alongside the motorway. I saw some very innovative solutions being offered at the UK Highways show 2 weeks ago by a company from Turkey. Companies from Scandinavia, they've looked at options in the northeast around areas like Sunderland, Hartlepool, Middlesbrough. And I think the beauty of those areas is, you've got severe social deprivation there. There's been massive unemployment for decades now due to the closure of the steel industry and shipbuilding and petrochemical plants that were once abundant in those areas. And there are still a lot of people available in those areas that have the engineering skills, the petrochemical skills to take on board some of these new technological solutions to recycling of tires. And they're very highly skilled people, and they may be of a generation where they would certainly come back and train others to work in those areas. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Lots of brownfield sites available, geographically ideal because it's right next to the sea. So you've got opportunity for distribution, wide distribution of product. And the same can be said of places like Port Talbot in South Wales. We're seeing the closure of Tata Steel, what's left of it. So we're going to have a similar situation there. But again, ideally, geographically situated by the sea, lots of engineering expertise, petrochemical engineers, processing expertise. So I think, this is where the government needs to step in and recognize that, those could become hubs of excellence, engineering excellence, um, green technology excellence, and it would attract that, inward investment. Ironically, both of those areas are quite special to me because um, my grandfather's family, my mum's dad's family, actually walked in the 1850s from Dowlis in South Wales all the way to Middlesbrough to join the steel industry and have a better life. So I'm very passionate about supporting those areas and the people there. But it's almost a bit of a no-brainer. You've got people literally queuing up from the States, from Scandinavia, from Turkey and other countries to invest. But you try and have a conversation with the government about pyrolysis and the beauty of pyrolysis and what we can generate from it. And it's almost like the screensaver goes up and you just can't make any progress. And yet, continuously, successive governments have told us that they are committed to the green agenda, that they're committed to becoming more sustainable as a country and self-sustaining as a country. But I think, to be honest with you, it's manifesto lip service. We're not seeing true investment. I think what's strange about this as well is that the UK is ranked as an easier place to do business. It's ranked right up there in the top 10 compared with other European economies. And as I said, successive governments have said that they're going to create investment by offering great tax regimes and that sort of thing. But I don't think there is a true understanding of innovation in this country anymore, and certainly not at government level. I think they get too embroiled in fads. There's too much short-termism. It's about winning the next election. It's about putting the next manifesto together. There's no strategic continuity in anything that government does. They don't come in and put something right that might not be quite working. They simply scrap it and start again. I have a long background in the skills sector. And I saw every time the government changed, we went from industry lead bodies to industry training bodies and boards to industry training organizations, sector skills bodies, sector skills councils, and we're seeing it again now. We're losing the Institute for Apprenticeships and we're going to have Skills England instead. It's just constant. Let's completely reinvent, spend millions on new logos and hiring new chief executives, and nothing ever gets taken forward. Now, in comparison, and I know the German economy is not doing as well as it used to, and there were lots of reasons for that. But I was raised in Germany, and I have many friends out there. And I remember when the wall came down in '89, and the government at the time said we need to work with everybody, including the opposition, to put together a long-term strategy to rebuild and integrate East Germany and have one united country. And they stuck to that plan. And even though governments changed and Bundesminister changed and that sort of thing, that continuous process as a strategy was taken forward. And that's what we've been lacking. And it's sad because I remember sitting on the CBI committee with Lord Heseltine looking at the No Stone Unturned research that he was doing. And it's one of the things I raised then. There's no long-term strategic plan for this country, no industrial strategy. We chop and change governments. We have a fad mentality. We have a crowd pleaser mentality, but we just don't have strategic leadership. And if a government can't display strategic leadership, if a government can't understand opportunity, and if a government can't sort out investment, then we're in dire straits.
Yeah, we see a lot of change for change's sake.
Mm,
Well, we're the new government, and it doesn't matter which color it is. We're the new
mm,
government, therefore we must change things.
mm-hmm.
and on the short termism, one of the challenges for the rubberized asphalt sector is
Mm,
that rubberized asphalt lasts a bit longer than the industry wanted, the road industry wanted to. And of course,
mhm.
councils, when they look at, and it's more expensive, and local authorities, when they look at their road budget, they're only thinking in a 1 year term. They're not
Yes.
thinking 5, 10 years ahead. What can we do today? Not the
Mm,
investment for the long term future. So
mm.
it's something that seems to be endemic in the UK, and I'm sure you do too. I notice it if I drive in Europe, um, Germany, Belgium, France. Most of the roads are actually in very good condition. As soon as you cross back into the UK, you you know you're here. You can shut your eyes. You know you're here because the suspension in your car takes a hammering. And
Mhm.
there's roadworks everywhere, but yeah, who knows? Anyway, enough of that. What is the position of the NTDA on EPR now? This was something that Darren Lindsay from the BTMA brought up at the TRA forum. And I got a sneaking suspicion that the NTDA stance on this may have changed over the years.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back historically and look at extended producer responsibility, so I suppose government-driven extended producer responsibility, the NTDA's concern, and of course, the NTDA is a broad church of members. So we have our core membership, which is essentially Tyres distributors, large and small. But over the years, through supplier membership, we've recruited all the manufacturers and the wholesalers and aftermarket suppliers, etc. So there was a grave concern that we would have something done to us as opposed to with us. And by means of an example, what happened in the Republic of Ireland has not been a shining example of success. Colleagues over in Northern Ireland who are NTDA members who have cross-frontier business operations continuously complain about the situation there, how it's been undermined by, again, criminality, how it's been undermined by people digging up thousands of tyres that were buried under the peat bog for stabilisation and have re-emerged in the market to claim the €2. And just generally the whole way that it was introduced and how it was very inconsistent about what people were going to be charged on anything other than PCRs, So for years, people didn't really understand what was going to be charged for truck tires and others. So it's not ideal. I remember having a presentation in Northern Ireland and then a subsequent presentation at our conference in 2016 about this from Repack. And they showed us all of these designs, mock-ups of the new recycling plants and everything else that were going to be introduced as a result of the surplus that we're going to generate from this scheme. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. And that's very disappointing. So that was the big concern. But fast forward to where we are now, and lessons have been learned. Lessons have been learned by the manufacturers. Lessons have been learned by importers and the tire trade in general. And I think we are probably at a stage now where the people running the trade associations, the makeup of those individuals, both new and long established, we've probably got a team now who could work with government sensibly and with our members, put together a collective solution and make sure that, and I keep using this phrase, that government does it with us and not to us. Because I think that an extended producer responsibility scheme, government driven, could work. It will require change. It will be a disruptor to the marketplace. But we probably need a serious disruptor at the moment because, it's not working. It works in some areas, but overall, it's not working. And it's not reprocessing 100% of the tires here. And, I want to see a lot of things. I want to see uh, reinvestment, promotion, support for the retreading industry. We've seen the demise of the UK retreading industry. There are certain companies that are still doing very well, but overall, in terms of medium and small operators, they're disappearing, and that's a scandal, really. When you can retread a tire, a truck tire, for example, and get 2, 3 lives out of it. Well, that's fantastic, and that really does tick the box when it comes to the green agenda. It also means that we're investing in jobs in the UK. The more people working in retreading, the more engineering jobs we have in the UK, the more self-sufficient we become, the more sustainable we become. I'd like to see, to be honest with you, remolds come back. Why not? Why are we disposing of so many car tires by incinerating them in the cement kilns when we could be remolding them? Um, you know, I grew up with a father and a stepfather who swore by remolds, not just because of the cost, but because they worked. It was a solution, and all of those things. I think we need to look at, and we need to do it together. And I think that there is definite now an argument for EPR. I think that there is a lot of support for EPR, certainly speaking to colleagues within the manufacturing sector. And I think the NTDA has to make sure that alongside its fellow trade associations, it's at the forefront of making sure, I'll say it again, that we do it with them and not have it done to us.
Yeah, it's there have been plenty of examples of government doing it to the industry
Mm,
since 2011, and in almost every case they've had to revise things. I mean, revision's always going to be there, but we wouldn't want to have well, you mentioned the repack situation. We wouldn't want to have the Ali Poor situation where they
no,
completely redo things.
yeah,
Um, I think on the recycling side, there's a fear amongst recyclers, not necessarily TRA members,
hmm
that they will miss out on contracts. But
hmm
again, I think if my belief is if they're bona fide, um,
yeah,
it's not going to be a long-term issue. There will be a rationalization of the industry if and when it comes.
mm,
Um, and you talk about disruptive changes. I think we're already starting to see some of that. Um, Stapleton's doing their collection service through the ETL group to supply Credential and Murfitts. That has
mm,
already been disruptive to the collection system. And I suggested to a couple of people, look, if you're having a problem with this, why don't you partner up with another distributor,
hmm
partner up with Mitchell Deaver or somebody else, so that they're doing the reverse logistics, bringing the tires to you, and it removes this problem. They
mm,
still get paid. Uh,
mm,
it it just it removes that grey area of
mm,
the illegal collectors or the fly-by-nights. Anyway,
hmm
um, it's been
Well, I just say to that, Ewan, I absolutely agree with you. But once again, we come back to long-termism and strategy, don't we? People need to have a strategy for their business. They need to think in long-term solutions as opposed to short-term. And partnerships will always be the way forward. And in terms of disruptive and how some companies will do well and others won't, as I quote the situation with the security industry. So when I was at the British Security Industry Association, I found myself at the forefront of licensing, government licensing of security personnel, whether it be security guards, door supervisors, protection officers. And I ended up being seconded to the Home Office. So the BSIA worked closely with the new regulator to ensure that professional standards were addressed, that training was addressed, that infrastructure was addressed, that businesses had sufficient time to actually implement all of the changes. And still, some companies fell by the wayside. Was that a bad thing? No. Big disruption in the marketplace. But once licensing was in place and everything settled down, huge and significant improvement, both in terms of training of individuals, their working conditions, and the reputation of the industry. Well, I think probably we're at a stage where we need that too in the tire industry. So, yeah, I certainly welcome the debate around EPR and will ensure that the NTDA represents the needs of its members accordingly.
Well, I'd like to thank Stefan Hay for his open and frank responses to the questions and an honest discussion on the state of the tire recycling sector in the UK. I think it's clear from the discussions we've had today with Stefan Hay and in podcast 68 with Darren Lindsay from the BTMA that there is an air of change about the tyre recovery sector in the UK. It's only a matter of time, and we have to wait and see what the politicians do, both here in the UK and also in India, which is our main market. In the meantime, thanks for watching and take care, and we'll see you next time for podcast 70.